Welcome to a new episode of The Corner 3 here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. I'm Cale Berger, Alan Saunders, and joining us is Sarah Spencer from the Post-Gazette. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
We are in the Beaver County Auto Studios, and we have a big game coming up here in the city of Pittsburgh. It is the city game this Friday at PPG Paints Arena. Pitt Panthers taking on the Duquesne Dukes, and this has kind of been a pretty tightly contested game over the last few years, and I think it seems like it's going to be that this year as well. The Panthers coming in 6-1, just fell the other night to the Iowa Hawkeyes, number 14th ranked team in the country. So they're coming off a loss, and Duquesne, they come in, I believe, 4-1. So both teams, some decent starts to the season, and they're looking to get a win over a crosstown rival. Sarah, start with you. You covered Duquesne for the Post-Gazette. What have you seen so far this season from the Dukes that has really impressed you?
I think something that has impressed me is probably Duquesne's ability to play 12 guys and make it work, because not that many college teams can do that. And they're getting some pretty solid play from some freshmen who don't have any college experience. Like Sincere Carey has been great to the point where sometimes he's so dominant they just kind of ball screen for him and let him go, let him do his thing. Eric Williams Jr., team's leading scorer, he's a sophomore. He's another guy who sometimes you can just let him do his thing. But I think something that is a strength of Duquesne's this year is that they can play a couple different styles depending on what the defense is giving them, because they have so many different rotations of guys. Are they going to play small for a little bit? Are they going to play big for a little bit? They can do a little bit of both. To varying success, I guess, because they did have that loss to Notre Dame. Some of that was mistake inflicted, not necessarily talent. But I think it'll be really interesting to see how they match up against Pitt, especially with Xavier Johnson playing the way that he does.
And that's kind of the opposite of the Panthers in that both teams have freshmen, but the Panthers are really playing only about 7 or 8 guys.
Right.
And they really only have one way to play, and that's with 4 guards at a time and 1 big man. Mm-hmm. So that might be an area where Duquesne's going to be able to get an advantage in this game, is by going big on them and trying to force the ball down low and create some mismatches.
Yeah, if they were to do that, it'll be interesting because Mike Hughes, who's a transfer from Akron, he's been playing he was hurt for a year. He had surgery a while ago for shin splints in his shin, obviously. So he was out for a while, and then now he's been back, and he's been playing pretty well. He's kind of coming on. Marcus Weathers, who's a forward for Duquesne, he really hasn't hit his stride yet, but he's a really physical guy. So I think those 2 players are going to be really key. If they do want to play small, Keith Dambrot actually said this today at availability, they can kind of bump Eric Williams up, put 3 other guards behind him, and just play with a center and just see what happens, kind of similarly to Pitt. So these teams they're kind of different but the same, because they're kind of similar defensively sometimes. It's just going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I think from a matchup standpoint, I think one of the most interesting things is when you look at the St. Louis game, and I think St. Louis and Duquesne are pretty equivalent, like talent level. Mm-hmm. You look at the St. Louis game, and they had success by being really physical inside. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think playing small is. I think Duquesne has, especially the guys at the guys that can play at the 4 and the 5 have a definite mismatch against when they're going to be guarded by a Pitt guard inside, probably Malik Ellison or Jared Wilson Frame, Audis Toney, one of those 3 guys. Those are Pitt's playing them at the 4, but those are perimeter players. And if you could get a guy like Weathers, who I think is a physical player inside.
He's a big guy and he's long.
Hassan French from St. Louis, I don't know if you've seen him.
Yes,
he had a good game against Pitt, and I feel like is a very similar kind of player.
That's true. The only thing is, backing up, Hughes and Weathers are a bunch of, as Keith said today, puppies. So they're freshmen. Yeah. So it's like size-wise, interestingly, Duquesne looks good this year, whereas in the past you wouldn't be able to necessarily say that when these teams play. So size-wise, yeah, I totally see what you're saying. Duquesne has also had a lot of unforced turnovers the past couple weeks, though, without really even much ball pressure. So it's like, I think I see what you're saying, but we'll just have to see how they play.
And I think the biggest guy, if you're the Panthers, that you need to focus on this Duquesne team is obviously going to be Eric Williams Jr.
Yeah.
Average leading scorer for the team, 15.2 points per game, dominating on the boards as well, 8.6 rebounds per game. He is just so athletic. He is such what I described as when I first saw him play, I think last year was the first time I saw him play in the city game. He's got like an NBA body. he looks like just an athlete who...
He's put on 15 pounds.
Exactly, so he's even bigger now. He's going to be, I think, the biggest difficulty for the Panthers because who's going to guard him? Who's going to match up with him? And I guess it's going to be Malik Ellison most of the game, trying to match up at the 3 or so.
Probably it'll be... It depends on how small Duquesne plays, but it'll be Wilson Frame probably a lot. And, I mean, Jared's more athletic than he was a year ago, but his defense isn't the strongest part of his game.
No.
So I think that could be a tough matchup for Pitt. The thing to me that I think is the way the game's going to go is how Duquesne deals with Xavier Johnson, because
I think you said it.
He's clearly Pitt's best player.
Yeah.
And he presents a challenge on both sides of the ball. He's super athletic defender. I mean, far more athletic than anyone the Dukes are going to face in the A-10 as far as a point guard defense. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, the same guy is, I mean, he was just blowing, but I think he could have driven on Iowa every single possession if he wanted to.
And Pitt drives a lot better than Duquesne. They get to the line, so I think that might be
I'm kind of interested to see who matches up against him defensively. Is it Tavian Dunn-Martin? Because he's kind of the
Tavian's been getting some steals, and that's kind of a different strength of Duquesne this year. That hasn't really been something that you think of when you think them. They've been diving for balls, going for steals a lot. So I think they will try to kind of put Johnson on his heels. It just depends on if it works.
Yeah, I think Dunn-Martin's an athletic defender that can probably stay with him.
Small,
but then I think also Duquesne gives something up if he's going to play 30 minutes offensively too. There's a trade-off there. And if you end up with less of a Sincere Curry or a Mike Williams with the ball in his hands, or Mike Lewis, excuse me.
Right.
But I think that to me is the first team that stops Xavier Johnson will be the next team that stops him will be the first one. But I think the Dukes have interesting guards. Maybe more interesting than
they do,
like Iowa.
Yeah.
Iowa's a good team, but they don't really. That's not a team that matches up athletically with Pitt. They win because they have good structure and size, but
disciplined.
Pitt's got some dudes, but Duquesne has athletes. I think, unlike really Pitt's seen yet.
Yeah, I mean, a good example of that is probably Sincere Carey, who's played lights out for Duquesne so far. The thing about Sincere is even when he's not scoring, he might have 8 points, but he'll also have 8 assists, which was completely missing from last year's game. So I think physicality. I think it was Mike Lewis who really hasn't caught on yet. It'll be interesting to see what he does in that game because, you got to be able to score at 5 points at all 5 spots if you're going to beat Pitt. If you're Duquesne, you can't have a shooting guard, or you can't have someone going cold the whole night. And that's kind of been the thing. But yeah, there's just so much to talk about. I'm overwhelmed.
And you talk about Mike Lewis, and he's one of the veteran guys on this team. I think that if Duquesne wants to be able to pull off that upset or contend in this game, he has to play much better than he has.
He does, and if he doesn't, then I guess you got to go with Lamar Norman or someone who's a freshman for them who's got some bounce, and he's also played really big in an overtime win that Duquesne had. So what do you do? That's the thing with Mike Lewis. If he doesn't catch fire, you can't play him for 33 minutes a game like they did last year.
I think the one thing that really stands out to me about this game is that 6 months ago, I would have said oh man, Duquesne's a lot better than they were last year. I mean, a lot better than they're going to really give Pitt trouble. And then I saw Pitt,
and then you see Pitt
and I'm
Iowa.
Ooh, I don't know, their Pitt's really good too. And I think the end result is this turned into a big game, not just a big game in Pittsburgh. I mean, if you look at the national college basketball schedule this weekend, this is a bigger game, and we're going to talk about some national stuff in a minute, but this is Pitt's probably third biggest non-conference game.
Yeah.
I think Duquesne's probably a little bit better than St. Louis. Both neutral site. I mean, it's no worse than fourth. And I mean, obviously Duquesne played at Notre Dame, so that's a tougher game. But I mean, this is a big basketball game for both of these teams. I mean, if Duquesne has any sort of thoughts of being an at-large team, getting out of the A-10 without having to win that conference tournament, they got to put down a win like a Pitt.
Yeah.
You have to be able to beat, or you have to be able to pull off one of those, I guess, upsets.
Yeah,
You
need a quadrant 1 win, which is the new terminology.
New terminology, which we'll get to.
Yeah, which I don't think it is new terminology anymore.
Pitt
has plenty of chance. I mean, Pitt's strength of schedule is not going to be in question. They play the toughest conference in the country, but for them, it's getting to that 500 mark and getting a postseason bid. They have to have every win they can get in the non-conference if they want to make the postseason. This is a huge game for both these teams. I'm really excited about it. I think to me, this is going to be the most meaningful city game we've seen in a really, really long time.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think you bring up a good point about Duquesne and the A-10. Like, the A-10 is sometimes like a 3-bid league, sometimes you don't always have to win that conference championship to go. But you got to do a little more. Like, Duquesne last year had one of the weakest non-conference schedules, like, in the country. So you got to be able to beat these games and have those signature wins, or else no one's really going to look your way. And they know that. So I think that kind of adds some fire.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, going to be an exciting game. Like Alan said, it's going to be big time around the country, and I think that this is big. It's big for Pitt that they've kind of been tested over the last week or so going into this game, because this is going to be a game where there's going to be a crowd at PPG Paints Arena, and there's going to be a lot of Duquesne fans that are going to be that don't like Pitt, and there's going to be Pitt fans as well. Mm-hmm. But this is probably going to be one of the biggest turnouts they've had in Pittsburgh all season, and definitely since last year. So they're going to be in front of a lot of eyes, and this is going to be a chance for Pitt and Duquesne as well, but for Pitt especially, to kind of prove to the fans that, okay, we're on the right track, we're on our way back, and this is what's going to determine if fans start coming out to the Peterson Event Center. If on this stage at PPG Paints Arena, if they can show that they're a program on the rise that's making their way back, this is going to be a game that's really going to do a lot to convince people.
For either fan base, you just really want to win this game. Like, Duquesne always wants to win this game, right? Because they're the perennial, like, little brother, which everyone hates being called that. But just as far as what recent history, when you haven't been to the NCAA tournament in like 40, 41 years or whatever, that's just how you're going to be perceived. So I feel like Duquesne always comes out with motivation, but I feel like Pitt this year, especially after such a bad year last year, I feel like Pitt kind of has that is in a kind of almost a similar situation, because Pitt's like, hold on, new coach, new era, we're good. Can we please stop talking about that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some of that from the Pitt's perspective, more than there has been in the past, where, like, in the height of the Jamie Dixon era, Duquesne was just like another non-conference game to get through. Mm-hmm. And, you really don't want to lose that one, but like it didn't matter. Even when they did lose, I think Dixon lost once to Duquesne. It wasn't a big deal. Mm-hmm. But I think losing this game, like Cale said, I think it would be a big deal for Pitt and also for like their postseason.
Yeah.
Want to talk about some national college stuff?
Absolutely. So
we kind of touched on it.
We alluded to it a little bit. A big kind of, I guess, controversy early on in the college basketball season was the first net ratings released by the NCAA. Net, which I guess it's an acronym. We don't really know a lot about.
Stands for NCAA Evaluation Tool, which then wonders, why isn't it NCAA? Yeah, I don't know. It's just bad.
Regardless, they got rid of RPI, which was a much maligned system they used to determine, or one of the factors they used to determine NCAA tournament teams in the past. They got rid of that after following last season, and now they're going with net and using that as the predominant, ranking system tool they're going to use to determine who goes to the NCAA tournament. Well, they released the first ones earlier this week on, I believe it was on Monday, and a lot of question marks. And just to read off a few of them, if you haven't seen them already, number one in the net ratings to start the year, the Ohio State Buckeyes at 6-0. And Ohio State has a quality win over Creighton. They are 6-0, like I said, but I don't think anyone thinks that Ohio State's the best team in the country. Rounding things out, you have Gonzaga at 5, Duke is 6. You have Loyola Marymount at 10, at 7-0.
Kentucky at like 60.
Kentucky is like 60. The Pitt Panthers on Monday were number 23 in these rankings.
Duquesne was 40.
Yeah, and Duquesne's 40.
Yeah,
we've got a quadrant 1 game here Friday night.
Apparently.
If they even still use quadrant 1.
No, they will. In fact, the NET ratings will be how they determine what is a quadrant 1 and quadrant 2 win.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is a mess.
It just doesn't... It just doesn't really make much sense to me yet. I will say, whenever a new ranking system comes out, I do feel like it takes, because people don't like change. You get used to something and then they change it. So no matter what, it's going to ruffle feathers. But this, I do think, what did Nate Silver call it? Like the dumbest ranking system he'd ever
in any sport ever. Or something.
And like one of the things,
ouch.
If you've made Nate Silver mad with your new evaluation metric, you've probably done it wrong.
Yeah.
But like one of the things that to me always stood out was like, everyone always said, okay, yeah, the RPI at the beginning of the season, don't really pay attention to it. It's kind of stupid. Wait until
doesn't matter anyway.
Yeah, wait until January. Mm-hmm. But like if you're gonna come up with a new thing, why wouldn't you make the new thing better so that it did make sense at the beginning of the year? Like,
right.
I mean,
make it more clear.
Like, it just if it doesn't make sense at the beginning of the year, and you know it's not going to make sense at the beginning of the year, why release it? Mm-hmm. And like there was an interview I guess Mike DeCourcy did with one of the NCAA associate commissioners, and he talked about transparency and wanting to, but they haven't released the whole formula yet. So like we don't even know how to figure it out. So like there's the tiniest half measure of transparency that's making it worse by making it seem stupid.
From what we do know right now,
we don't have any strong feelings on this.
No,
we don't have. We don't think anything.
From what we know right now, it takes into account stuff like the strength of schedule and neutral site games and where you played and stuff like that, which is all great. But some of the other things they take into account, like they take into account margin of victory, but they only do it up to 10 points. So if Duke beats Kentucky by 30 or whatever they did in the first game of the season,
it's like 36 or something.
Yeah, it basically means they beat them by 10. It doesn't take margin of victory into account past 10 points, which doesn't really make sense at all.
I think if you're going to talk about point differential, then you should just say what it is.
Exactly.
Maybe that makes it too complicated. I mean, I don't know. I'm not behind that veil, but
I think there's the problem, and actually this was like one of the things Nate Silver said is like, this is what happens when you develop a metric by committee. And so one of the things that happens is, well, if point differential counts, then when Duke plays Furman, they're going to try to beat them by 110.
Yeah.
And
I see what you're saying.
And see, it's one thing for like Ken Palm to say like, well, look, the best measure of a team's ability is by taking all of the data into account and using all the available information. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they really did beat those teams by 30, 40, or 50, not 10. But it's a different thing for the NCAA to say, we want you to beat teams by more. Mm-hmm. Because I think that changes the sportsmanship landscape in a way that the league doesn't want to do. And that's an interesting conflict that I think is tough. It's a tough spot for the NCAA, right? Because they want to reward.
How do you say, because then people might think, oh, are you encouraging teams to blow?
But they really are.
So why would they even schedule this team if you're going to beat them by?
Well, they're kind of going the college football route where they're saying you need to just destroy people. You need to have style points. You need to pour it on.
Yeah.
And now translating that to basketball.
But the 10-point maximum, I think, is like supposed to be
supposed to temper that.
Yeah, supposed to bring that in. And the other thing is, like, we don't know the formula, but of the 5 pieces that they break it down, like 3 of them are basically just the record spun a slightly different way. It's like winning percentage, and then it's points percentage, and then it's winning percentage accounting for road, neutral, and home, which is fine. And 2 of those 3 were already into the RPI before. But it seems like it's very heavily weighting wins and losses, which to me, the committee can look at the record. Mm-hmm. Like, if all this metric is doing is quantifying the record,
we already have a record.
We already know what the record is. We don't need, and everybody knows what their Ken Palm efficiency is. So, I think the big thing is, like, what is this supposed to be telling us? Mm-hmm. And I don't think anybody has an answer to that. Like, okay, I know if I look at Ken Palm, I'm going to know what is the statistical efficiency of a team. And I know if I look at the standings, I'm going to know how much they win and how much they lose. This is supposed to be a third thing, but I don't know what question it's attempting to answer.
Yeah, it just seems to be a case of they didn't like all the flack they were getting from the RPI, and then
the RPI was not perfect.
Wasn't perfect, but it's just a case of they tried to fix it by making something new, and
they fumbled it a little bit.
Completely made it worse. It seems like the other thing, the last thing I want to mention about this is they have all these efficiency rankings that go into it as well. So they like Ken Palm and stuff, but it doesn't take into account who you played against. So your efficiency...
It's not adjusted. Like Ken Palm is adjusted.
It's not adjusted.
This is unadjusted. This is but then there's the strength of schedule in there next to it. I don't know.
So if you play North Carolina...
There's a stat that combines the two, but we're going to separate them out.
So if you're playing like North Carolina and then North Carolina A&T or something, it's the same. It doesn't matter. It's not adjusted. So it's very confusing. We've made a lot of
Hopefully I will say, like, as confused as we are all right now, this is what we've got for now. So I really do hope that we continue to learn more about it, and that I think it's like with anything, like RPI was annoying, but eventually I started talking about RPI.
Yeah.
You know, so hopefully eventually we can.
They got to release the formula.
They've got
to me that has to happen.
Totally. Hopefully
you need
that
transparency.
happens. Yeah. Hopefully that happens, and therefore we can all be a little bit more. Have our heads on straight.
I will say, when I was trying my best to research this new ranking system, I went to the NCAA website, and it's so funny the way that they're wording it. They're like, we got this new formula. We're not going to tell you anything about it. But,
isn't that great?
But look how great it is. Look how awesome it is.
Every math teacher wants you to show your work, right?
The picture is of all this confetti.
Yeah,
it's celebration.
And it says one shining moment right underneath it. So they link the one shining moment video right underneath the headline to say, like, this is where we're headed.
We're supposed to think positively about it, so that's why there's confusion.
I think the NET's one shining moment was when I asked Jeff Capel what he thought about it on Monday, and
this is funny.
Oh, yeah. He said, well, first of all, he said, I don't have any idea what you're talking about. And then I think it was Craig Meyer said, well, Ohio State's ranked first. And he said, that should tell you about everything you need to know.
That's all we need.
That's
great.
I'm good. I'm good.
Great.
So this is definitely going to be, I think, a talking point all season. I definitely feel like we're going to have to address it again at some point, because I feel like until we get to like 25 games in the season, it's still going to be just very...
Well, and everything's so lopsided right now. So it's like, okay, do things even out based on who is actually the best team, or are things still kind of
nobody knows, right? Nobody really knows. Like, until we see the formula, no one can really even figure out if, like, oh, well, if assuming that Duke wins, 24 games and Notre Dame wins 20, they're going to end up 5-25. Oh, okay, well, that makes sense. But nobody really has any idea what's going to happen. Yeah, weird.
Yeah. So it'll be fun to kind of look at as the season unfolds.
It's gonna be great.
Exactly. But
Quadrant 1 game Friday.
Seriously, that's all we know.
We're sure of that.
Yes. So that's a city game Friday, 7:00 at PPG Paints Arena, Pitt versus Duquesne, and that's going to do it for our college basketball segment of the show. Sarah, we know you got to run, but we thank you so much for joining us.
No, this is fun. Let's do it again.
Absolutely, sounds good. All right, we're going to switch it up and talk about some NBA, and there's two big storylines or trends this week that I kind of want to address. The first one is the Boston Celtics. Right now, they are nowhere near meeting the expectations I think everyone had for them coming into the season, sitting at 11-10 right now. They're kind of winning big games, but they're also losing a bunch of games that they shouldn't be, and they at times look just lost on both offense and defense. And there's a few things that I noticed where they can improve, and I got kind of a controversial take that I think they could, or move they could make to kind of shore things up.
All right, well, I think you hit on the really important thing, though, is that, like, the record is not good.
No.
But it's November. I think the record would not be so alarming if they didn't look terrible.
Yeah.
Like, about 50%. Like, it's not just that they're like... Good teams lose games. Good teams go through stretches where they're missing guys are banged up, shooter goes cold for a couple, like, whatever. You lose games. But they have looked like just awful. And I don't see them all. I haven't seen every game, but, like, it's hard to jive. This is a team that coming in, a lot of people thought were going to come out of the Eastern Conference with the way they've looked sometime. I can't connect those two. It's hard to a lot of times a big team goes through a struggle at the beginning of the year and people start freaking out. No, Pittsburgh Penguins. Yeah, it happens like every year.
Yeah, exactly.
And people are like, look, the Penguins are really good. They're fine. I'm not sure you could. Are the Celtics fine? I don't know.
Well, they have a lot of problems, and I think the main thing that's been kind of the trend or just been always the case over the Brad Stevens tenure is that he gives them entire freedom on offense to do what they want, to operate how they want if they play defense for him. The problem with the Celtics right now is they're playing really bad on the offensive end, really inefficiently, and they're not getting it done on defense either. If you look at the offensive side, Kyrie Irving is having a very good year, as he always does. He's great, but a lot of the guys are struggling because they just seem to be taking bad shots and making poor decisions. They're taking a lot of mid-range twos, which we know. I mean, we're all about the efficiency here on the corner three, the most efficient shot in basketball. They're really focused. They're really taking a lot of just deep twos, coming off screens and pulling up from mid-range, and those aren't efficient shots. Those aren't shots that win you basketball games. And it comes down to Jaylen Brown jacking up wild shots whenever. Jason Tatum is playing really well, but he's kind of still figuring out how to play in the NBA game. He's still learning on the fly. Terry Rozier off the bench is just coming in and not passing it to open shooters, pulling up wild jump shots, and just making poor decisions. And the guy that I think kind of the honeymoon period's over, where we're happy to see him back, but now 20 games in, Gordon Hayward is not playing great. He's taking shots from other guys that I think would be better suited getting more opportunities in this offense. He has the lowest. He's completely dropped off in player efficiency rating. He was at the highest of his career his last year in Utah. He's kind of all over the place now. They need to figure something out with Gordon Hayward, and maybe it's put him out of the starting lineup. Maybe it's switch some things up. I kind of have a more controversial thing about Gordon Hayward.
All right, let's hear your Gordon
I think
Hayward
if you're the Celtics, I think you trade Gordon Hayward. And I say that because they are just a logjam right now at shooting guard and small forward. There's not enough shots and time to go around. You have Jason Tatum, you have Gordon Hayward playing out of position at the 4. You have Jaylen Brown as well in there. And then you've taken the other guards into account. You have Terry Rozier, Marcus Smart, and Marcus Morris as well. And we came into the season talking about how much depth they have. Well, sometimes depth can hurt you. Sometimes you have just too many guys on your team, and not enough guys are getting opportunities, or as many opportunities as they should be getting. And I say trade him because he's come back and shown that he's healthy. He's just still not in the full groove of things yet. They're still trying to figure things out. Jason Tatum is clearly the future of your franchise. And Gordon Hayward's making $30 million a year. And if you can trade Gordon Hayward, get some stuff back, some role players, some pieces that can help you in the long run. This is a team that went to the Eastern Conference Finals without Gordon Hayward last year. And without Kyrie Irving and still got there. So they have the talent. It's not a matter of not having the ability, not having the players to do it. I think it's just a matter of too many mouths to feed in Boston. And I think that that's something you can get some picks for the future. You can get some players, the role players that can help you now. And you free up $30 million in cap space each year for the next 3 years.
I don't hate the idea. And I think the one thing that seems to me is that, like, when you combine when you have a team like Boston where they have a good amount of offensive freedom, what that really means is Stevens is letting his players decide who needs to have the ball. But I think really what that ought to mean, and if you look at another team that has a good amount of offensive freedom in the Warriors, really what that means is Steph decides who should have the ball. And I'm not sure that we're seeing that from Kyrie. Right? He's a good player. But is he the guy that's like, hey, man, that was a bad shot. Pass that.
I don't think he is that kind of guy.
So I don't think so either.
And I think the bigger problem, too, with them is I don't think that that Kyrie Irving and Jason Tatum are shooting enough. They're not as much a focal point of the offense as they should be.
Yeah.
They're giving too many opportunities to guys like Jaylen Brown, who's taking wild shots, taking inefficient shots. And Marcus Smart gets 3 or 4 opportunities a game to jack up threes when we know he's not a three-point shooter. So they're trying to please too many guys, where this Celtics team was at its best when everyone was playing their role. And now they're at a point where they have just too many guys on this team that are trying to get shots up, trying to get theirs. And I understand that Jaylen Brown and Terry Rozier are guys in contract years. They're trying to get theirs. They're trying to make their money because Terry Rozier is probably going to make $20 million in free agency. But there's just you need to focus on your stars on offense. Right now it's Kyrie Irving and Jason Tatum. And you look at the Warriors are a little different because they have 4 guys and 4 guys that can shoot and 4 guys that can make plays, so it's not as much of an issue with them. On this team, it's really Kyrie Irving and Jason Tatum that are your scorers, and everyone else is kind of filling a role, and I think they need to focus in on them. And the last thing with the Celtics is Al Horford's been awful, especially defensively. And he was a guy in the playoffs last year who, he was the reason they won a lot of those series against the Bucks, the Sixers. He was being asked to guard Giannis Antetokounmpo, Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, and he did a really good job. using his length and making things difficult for them. This season, he is not doing that. He's getting blown by on switches. He hasn't been able to switch on guards the way he has in the past. Getting blown by, getting bodied in the paint, and he's shooting like 30% from three as well, which was his biggest role in the team, was being the guy to stretch the floor. Now he's not doing that either as well. So he's going to need to step up. They're going to have to focus in on who are their, who butters your bread offensively. I hate that phrase, but I had it kind of fit here. Who gets it done for you offensively? It's Kyrie Irving and Jason Tatum. So you need to focus on them and tighten up defensively because...
Well, I think the problems are connected, right? Because if Horford was playing better defensively, then he would be getting more minutes, which means a more offensive... A guy that wants to shoot more. I mean, he's not a scorer.
No.
But that's okay. They need non-score. What they really need is someone that's going to go play a lot of defense and not demand the ball on offense.
They need exactly what he's done the last 2 years, and he's not doing that well enough right now.
Right. And so instead, they've got a more offensive-minded player in there, and then they're having a hard time getting everybody enough shots. And so who should they go get? Who's a defensive specialist that you could slide in there? Who's your trade target? You got one? I'm putting you on the spot here.
I know. I mean, this is really difficult, but one guy that I think if we're looking for big men, the problem in the league right now is everyone seems to have their big man established and no one wants to let go.
There's not a lot of trades.
There isn't. I feel like this is going to be a very dry trade year. That's why
especially for bigs.
That's the problem. But I think that on the wings, maybe there's a way that the Bucks try and make a deal because Chris Middleton is going to be a free agent, and maybe they can try and get something for him for the future because they're in a win now mode with Budenholzer and Giannis, and they're at the top of the East. But maybe they make a deal for Middleton because they don't expect him to resign, and maybe Middleton's a guy that can shoot threes for you, which the Celtics need, and a guy that can defend in the perimeter as well. Maybe that's an option. I'd have to think about it. Maybe I can come back with you next week and have an actual answer when I think about it.
Take some homework.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I feel like they just need to mix something up. And I love Gordon Hayward. I think everyone loves Gordon Hayward. But so far, and he's only played 22 games, one last year and now 21 this year, it's really not working out. And I feel like they're better off just getting more role players instead of having another star you're trying to get into the mix. I don't think they expected Jason Tatum to be this good. It's kind of a good problem to have, though, when Jason Tatum is 21 years old, probably 20 years old, and playing at this level. But moving on, want to talk about our last topic here, and that is Sixers first-round pick last year, the first overall pick, Markelle Fultz. It's been widely publicized, his struggles. Really did not play at all last year, only played a handful of games. Shot looks terrible. Came back this year. Shot looked a little better, but apparently there's reports coming out that he's going to see another shoulder specialist, that he's having issues with that shoulder again, and really struggling. The Sixers have struggled a lot when he's been on the floor, and now they make the trade for Jimmy Butler, and it sounds like they're ready to part ways. He's ready to part ways as well. I think that this is a perfect move for both. I think the Sixers, listen, sometimes you just got to take the loss and realize that you missed in the draft. They probably would have been better off, not trading out and just taking Jason Tatum, because clearly Jason Tatum was the best player in that draft. Honestly, I think they'd probably be better if they had Lonzo Ball, because at least Lonzo Ball is a facilitator and is a good defender as well. And Markelle Fultz right now is just kind of, his health is a mystery. He can't shoot the basketball. He's kind of all over the place and looks out of his element. I think it would be best for both of them to kind of have a fresh start.
I agree, but I think it's a tough trade because, like you said...
Who wants him?
The Sixers going to have to take a loss. Like, they're not going to get what you would get from last year's first-round pick out of him. Like, the value has gone way down already. And so then the Sixers have to look at, okay, well, what are the odds that he turns it around with us? We go get his shoulder checked out or fixed or what. I think the one thing that really, like, it makes sense for everybody to make a move is just that the level of expectations is always going to be with him in Philly.
Yeah.
And I think we are already pretty sure that he's not going to be that guy, right?
Yeah.
He's just not going to be one of the best players in the league like you would expect first overall pick to be. He's just, even if he gets his shoulder figured out, even if his shot comes around a little bit, just the total package, it's not there.
No.
And So I don't know. I guess it depends on how motivated Philly will be to move it, because they can just bench him. I mean, it's not.
They could.
They could use the cap space, but are they gonna like?
Well, they don't. He's not even taking that much of a cap hit.
Right. Like that's what I'm saying. Like
I think that what Philly really needs is shooting. And I heard a report today that there was interest from the Cavaliers, and that they were willing
a ton of sense.
They were willing to trade to make a pick and trade Kyle Korver. Kyle Korver finally gets back to Philadelphia after all these years. Kind of a great reunion for him, but. That's one trade that I've heard, but I look around the league and I think, who wants Markelle Fultz?
Not that many teams.
And also the other thing as well is the NBA is certainly not there's certainly not a deficiency of talented point guards. I mean, if you look at every team, there's like 4 or 5 teams that don't have an established point guard, or don't have a point guard that they're working towards the future that's trying to figure it out. I mean, who doesn't have a point guard? I mean, there's one team, and it's probably the Suns. And if you're the Suns, do you want Markelle Fultz?
No, you want a tank.
You want to exactly. I don't see any options of a place where the team that would want him or somewhere that would fit. But with Markelle Fultz, it's so perplexing, this whole issue. And coming into the year, I had written a column saying that I think that Markelle Fultz could win Most Improved Player. That if they have a great season and it's usually the guys that win that award are guys that are stepping into a role, they're going to take more shots, they're going to have more of a load on their shoulders. And I thought everyone said that his
shoulders
was fine. Yeah, exactly. That everyone said that his shoulder and everything was figured out, all of his health problems, and he fixed his shooting motion. Well, it hasn't, and clearly it's going to be a divorce between the two, and. It's going to be interesting to see where he lands up. And I think that the Sixers will be fine without him. He's not even playing that much anyways right now. J.J. Redick's in the lineup and giving them what they need.
Yeah, I think him just hanging out on the Sixers bench till the end of the season is a reasonable out. Like, I think that might happen.
It could happen. And
just because of the lack of landing spots.
Exactly.
Or he gets shoulder surgery.
And he's just injured. And he just rehabs the whole year. And then maybe in the offseason someone takes a chance on him. Someone trades him a second-round pick for him.
That seems reasonable.
Yeah. It could be an option. We'll see. But I have to say the final thing here is, and I talked about this with Mike Ostie 2 weeks ago, was when Jimmy Butler went to the Sixers and they were interviewing him in the practice facility, and someone was with their camera recording him with their phone, and you look in the background, and you see Markelle Fultz shooting free throws, and he's just like... It is the funniest thing, because you see Jimmy, he's like, I'm so excited, he's talking, I'm ready, we're a young team, we got a lot of excitement, and you see Markelle just like a Charles Barkley golf swing. It was just hilarious to see the kind of dichotomy of the two there, but we'll see how it pans out. But with that, that's gonna wrap it up here on the Corner 3. We thank you for tuning in. It has been a good third show, and we're just going to keep on rolling here. You can make sure to subscribe on Pittsburgh Sports Live, and also we're going to have a lot of coverage, all the coverage this weekend for the City game, Duquesne and Pitt, so make sure to tune into Pittsburgh Sports Now for that. Once again, this has been the Corner 3 in the Beaver County Auto Studios. Make sure to subscribe, and we will talk to you next week.